Today I'm thrilled to have Phil Kramer here with me from Philadelphia. Phil runs 3 photography locations in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, covering a variety of specialties including weddings, mitzvahs, fashion, events, and portraits. At the age of 24, Phil opened at Phil Kramer Photographers, now one of the most prominent photography studios in the country. His images have appeared in numerous magazines such as Time, Life, Elle, Philadelphia Magazine, Town and Country, Modern Bride, Wedding Pages, My Weddings and Philadelphia Weddings, as well as many fine art publications. In 1999, Phil was voted Best of Philly by Philadelphia Magazine and remains the only photographer to have ever held the title. The Art and Fashion Group International awarded him their highest honor, Master of the Craft. He has also received the coveted Kodak Gallery Award, a national award presented to photographers who are leaders in their field. The editors of Modern Bride magazine and Brides magazine have also acknowledged Phil as one of the top wedding and special event photographers in the nation. He was also included in the book The Best of Wedding Photography, published by Amherst Media, and featuring the top 6 photographers in the country, and Phil's image graces the cover. Most recently, the editors of The Knot turned to Phil for the cover shot of their latest hardcover book, The Complete Guide to Weddings in the Real World. So, hi Phil, it's really awesome to have you here and a great privilege, and I'm really thrilled to be having you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Today's topic is all about how Phil runs the thriving wedding photography side of his business, so let's dive right in. So Phil, what was that first spark of inspiration for you that got you interested in professional photography?
At age 9, my mother bought me a camera, and I fell in love with it. And I was the family photographer on family trips and all. And what really sparked it was I'm also a musician, and I was in a movie called Taps, which was filmed back in 1981 with Tom Cruise, Sean Penn, George C. Scott, and I was the drummer boy in the movie. It was a gentleman that filmed it was Owen Wiseman. When you're on the set for 4 months, you become friends with these people, and I would take photos, throughout the shooting of this film and bring them in, and Owen used to look at them and critique them, and every week I would bring my photos in. And who's best than him then to critique them? He said I had a nice eye, and he inspired me to go into photography. I had a drum scholarship to a school and turned that away and just told my father I'd like to try this if I could, and he gave me the opportunity and the strength to do it, and went to photography school and fell in love with it, and just start finding myself what type of photography I like to do, and got into fashion, and the fashion led into bridal fashion, and that led into wedding photography. And that's how I basically, in a short story, became a wedding photographer.
You do specialize in more than one type of photography. I know you have a wide spectrum of genres that you are active in. How do you manage to juggle so many specialties all at once and still kind of keep everything under control?
Like every weekend is a different event for me. But during the week, my passion is fashion also. And I do some fashion photography for apparel companies and all. Believe it or not, it kind of helps me become a better wedding photographer too, because it shows me how to pose a woman, how to, I can look at somebody and know exactly how to pose them and how to turn them and make them look great. And these girls I'm photographing, they're not models, so you got to be able to know how to move them and pose them, and you got to move. They're not going to move because they're everyday people. So it kind of helped me become a better wedding photographer by doing other genres of photography. Even with animals, I photograph animals, and I have little tricks I do with animals to get their attention, and and they look at me, and I get the shot, and the bride and the groom looks at me and go, "Wow, you knew what to do." It's just little tricks I learned in wedding photography is, you got to be quick, and you got to be on your toes, and you got to have some type of personality with them, because you're with them all day, and it's you're the only vendor after the event that's over. Everyone else goes home, should I say. The wedding photographer is always the one that's with them afterwards. So there's an experience that you're taking the bride and the groom to. It's not just taking photos, but they have an experience to be with you, and it's all about a experience. It's not about I take nice photos. Of course I do. Oh, yeah, by the way, I bring my camera. But it's all about the experience they have, I feel.
That's definitely a common theme that I hear from so many of the wedding and portrait photographers that I talk to on here, is that they're very focused on providing that experience for their clients. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. What would you say are the top qualities that you see in what you might consider a successful wedding photography business?
I really feel that it's a personality. You got to wear a lot of different hats as a wedding photographer, I feel. It's an emotional day for people. So you got to know how to read people and will know when to speak up and when not to speak up. And the photographer, I think, takes the lead of the day and takes the lead of how the day's going to progress and how it's going to unfold. I'm not saying to be a dictator or a director or be that photographer that's always in their face. No. I always tell my clients 80% of my images are more of a documentary of the day. And there's also that other 20% is the formals of the families, of the two of you and the wedding party and the families and all. We set the tone of the day. A lot of people now see each other prior, before the ceremony. The first look, they call that. And I've been doing that for a long time, even before they started doing it. It's just be able to bring them to a photographer needs to have that personality. If you're having a bad day at home, you can't bring that to the job. You got to be able to wipe off that face and just smile and tell her how beautiful she looks and convince them to come over to a certain area and make them feel comfortable in front of that camera, because it's such an emotional day. I feel that the photographers that shoot for me and I train, if that connection's not there and that personality's not there, it's hard to connect with them and hard to make them want them to do something. And of course, you got to be talented and know all the buttons and know how to read light and look at light and able to, I think today cameras are so much easier today. You don't have to know so much about. You do have to know about the f-stops and the shutters and all that, but not as complex as it was back in the 80s and 90s. When you couldn't look in the back of your camera to see what you were getting. You had to know what that you were doing. You wait for the film to come back from the lab, and what did I do wrong? So you really had to know what you were doing. Today, of course, you can cheat, and we call it cheating on the back of the camera and looking at it and which is fine, but you really have to know what you're doing in the sense of posing, I feel. Today, you don't see the posing. A lot of these people pick up a camera and, posing and lighting is so important, and knowing how to look at somebody and how to make them feel comfortable and how to pose them is huge. It's very huge.
Yeah, the posing thing is pretty critical. When I was doing weddings, people would say to me during the pre-wedding booking type consultation thing that, well, we want natural photos. We don't want posed images.
Right.
And then on the wedding day, they stand there and they go, well, how do we stand? What do we do? And I say, well, just be natural for a minute. Well, you're supposed to tell us how to stand and where we put our hands and things. And yet before they said, well, we don't want any posed photographs. So it must mean something different to them. I don't know exactly what kind of perception they have in their mind about it.
I think because when they look at the magazines and they look at real weddings and the back of these sections and stuff and what they grab, detail shots, a couple candid shots. But we all know as photographers, to get that shot, you got to bring them over to the light. You got to pose them, and to get that shot, it's not going to happen. If it does, great, but a majority of the time we are posing them and making it look like it just happened. And that's what a good photographer is, to make them feel comfortable. Again, knowing how to pose them. The way I pose is, I try to keep it as natural as possible. And if they're having fun with it and they're interacting with each other and they're laughing, I always say laugh. One of the things I always stress to my photographers, I always say, don't ever use the word smile. Don't ever tell your clients to smile. When you tell them to smile, it actually tightens them up. Mm-hmm. They're subjects, they're people, talk to them, interact with them. If they're having fun, the photos are going to show it, and it's going to look natural. So don't ever say smile. Talk to your subjects. When I photograph children, I talk to them. Who's your teacher? You have a best friend, you have a girlfriend, you have a boyfriend, and they start talking to you and they start, boom, there's a shot. I don't ever say, say cheeseburger, no. It's always talk to your subjects. When I photograph a child, I drop to my knees, I drop down to their level, I chat with them, I talk to them, I make them feel comfortable, and then, I step back and I start shooting away and start asking them questions. And it's just the same thing with a couple, with a family. When I look at a family portrait, I look at my A's and my B's. And this is cruel to say it, but I look at my A's. My A's are my attractive people, and my B's are, people that don't want to be photographed, should we say. Mm-hmm. And I put my A's up front and I put my B's in the back. And that's the way I pose. So I look and see, I'm not going to sit a heavy woman to sit her down. She's going to look horrible. I'm going to stand her up and hide her as much as I can. So my A's are my attractive people who I'm going to sit, and my B's are going to be filtered in there through the back and through people. And that's the way I pose, and that's the way I kind of go about it. And they respect me for it, the people that don't want to be photographed, and they thank me afterwards. They come up to me and go, "Thank you so much." And the way I look at it is, it's my job to make them look great any way I can. And as photographers, you got to know that, and you got to know how to pose and how to make people feel comfortable, and and they respect you for it. When somebody comes up to me and thanks me for, like, after I did the family portrait, she doesn't like to have her photograph taken, she comes up and thanks me later, and thank you so much, that was great. Mm-hmm. So it's important to know your subjects and know, and you got to think quick and you got to move quick. It's, these people don't want to stand there forever, they want to go eat and they got to go somewhere,
Right.
So, you got to be very efficient and ready to rock and have a personality when you're photographing them. When I talk to my subjects, I never talked into my camera. I got to pull my camera off my face. I interact with them. I talk to them. I pull the camera back and I grab it. Sometimes I have it on a tripod and I, do my family portraits that way. And I look through the camera, I frame it up, and then I look up to my subjects and I talk to them as I shoot. As they're looking at me, I'm shooting away. I don't have to look through the camera anymore. Start interacting with your bride and groom, start interacting with your wedding party, start acting, and you will see a huge difference by not using the word smile. Don't ever say smile.
Being able to think quickly on your feet and react to changing situations because a wedding is very fluid in some parts. There are parts of it that are kind of static and you know what to expect.
Right.
And then there's other parts that are very dynamic and fluid and everything's all changing. And it's not just right there in front of you, it's behind you, around you. You have to be almost everywhere.
One of the things when I train my photographers, I try to tell them it's like a movie. And the movie is the bride and the groom. They're the stars of the movie. Then you got your principal actors. Your principal actors are your parents, your brothers and sisters. And then you have the wedding party afterwards. Mm-hmm. And the extras, all the people they invited. So if we go in that sense, okay, because they're the people that want to be photographed. The parents, you just kind of keep an eye on them. So if you know who's who, if I photograph a wedding, I guarantee I'll get everybody in that room, one way or the other. If they're sitting down, I'm still taking a photograph. Anticipating what's going to happen before it happens, read the room, look at it, go in there and shoot it. From doing it all the time, I basically know what's going to happen before it happens, but something else is going to unfold behind you, and you got to look behind you. You got to see who's, if the first dance is coming out, and you got to know where the parents are, and they're watching and they're laughing as you got to get a reaction shot of the parents watching, because I'm actually, when I'm photographing, I'm designing the book as I'm shooting it. There's the two of them dancing, and I need a little reaction page, on the opposite side, maybe the wedding party watching, or maybe the parents watching, or, so I'm trying to look for those shots as I'm shooting away. I'm actually designing the book as I shoot it. And that's the way I kind of go about doing it. My trademark is, trying to anticipate what's going to happen, look at it, go in there and get it. One of the things I see, like I have interns that shoot for me, and one of the biggest things I see is that every time they take a picture, they look in the back of the camera. Every time. Not just once or twice to see if it's working, but every time they take a picture, they look in the back of the camera. And I go up to them, I said, "Is there something wrong with the camera?" And they said, "No." "Why are you looking in the back of the camera every time you take it?" I mean, look at it once, make sure, it's working, and make sure your settings are right. You like what you see, and the histogram looks good. What's happening is when you look in the back of the camera, something happens in front of you and you're losing it because you look in the back of your camera. You got to always be shooting away, Mm-hmm. So try to break that mold from them, look in the back of the camera every time. They should just check it, make sure it's working, and go in and dive in and go for it. Trust the camera. It's working. Nothing's going to change. I see it happen all the time. Yep. And there's a laugh, like mom's crying, and, there's something started happening and you lost the shot because you look in the back of your camera.
I think one of the best compliments, for me personally anyway, that I came away with from a wedding was one time where the bride's father came up to me after the reception was over, and he said, "Thank you for everything that you've done," and so on. He said, "But how many of you are there? Because you seem to be everywhere." Everywhere I looked, you were there. And I came away from that thinking, yeah, actually, I feel like I did my job right. Mm-hmm. There was one occasion where the bride and groom had said before the wedding, "Now, please, we only have one odd request, and that is, please get a photograph of Auntie Jean, because we hardly ever see her. She lives in Canada or somewhere, and she's coming down for the wedding, and we really want to make sure that we get some photos of her. We love her to death, and we don't see enough of her." And I'm like, okay. So come the wedding day, the bride says, that's Auntie Jean over there, don't forget. I spent that day chasing that woman around that wedding like crazy. She was totally camera phobic. She did not want to be photographed. And she was hiding herself in, like, she was forced to be in the group photographs, but she would hide deliberately behind somebody at the back. So you got to watch out for things like that too, you know.
Again, communication is huge when photographing a wedding. So 30 days, 60 days before the wedding, I sit down with the client, the parents, and the bride and the groom, and we do a timeline. After the timeline, I do a shot list. And the shot list contained of all the shots that they want to. I control the shot list, which is really important that you don't give them the shot list. Because if you give them the shot list, they're going to check everything off. As photographers, we know, by asking the right questions, you're going to get, like, I get the shot of her mom, her dad, and the three of them. And I ask about brothers and sisters, and I ask about if they're married and grandparents. And one of the things I always ask is about, aunts and uncles. And sometimes we do the big aunt and uncle shot, and sometimes we don't. So the ones that we don't, I usually go up to, if mom has a sister or a brother, I will go up to them during the night and say, I hear you got a sister and a brother. She says, yes. I say, where are they? Let's get a photograph of the three together. Because it's important that you kind of cover everybody that's there. And of course, mom, I'm sure, wants a picture with her sister and brother. So, you get that photo. So you want to make sure that you're covering your T's and you're dotting your I's. And if you see that the sister's, her brother is someplace doing something, and well, I'm going to take a picture of this guy before I take a picture of this other person because he's related to the family and most likely he's going to make the album. We sell pictures is what we do. So, we got to think, who are the players again? Who are the extras? Who are the principal actors? Who are the main actors? So by knowing the family and knowing who they look like is important. So, by finding that, looking for that Aunt Jean all night, if you turned around, she was there. Of course, you're going to take a photograph of her because they love her and they're going to have her on her album. It's important that you know who the players are, doing the 30-day appointment beforehand, doing the timeline. And as sometimes there's no event planner there. We are the event planner. We have to know, okay, when to get your dress on and when we're going to leave the house or when we're going to show up and do the families. But once we get to the event, it's the maitre d' and the band or the DJ that's in charge, and you just got to make sure that you're on page with them and everything's going as flow as possible as it should go. We are setting the tone throughout the day. Like I said, the photographer is important that they know the timeline and know the shot list and call people by their names. We're driving to the job. The assistant's telling me who the names are. I'm trying to memorize them so I can, when I get there, I know who they are. And then, hey, you, and can you go to your left a little bit? And all of them turn, and to the left. If I can call them by their name, yes, they're going to turn. So it's important that you know their names and just, so you got to do your homework a little bit. And they respect you for it. They come up to you later and they, like you said, they thank you so much. You did a fantastic job. You just got to understand it, and you have to understand that they understand that you get it. And if they trust you, they're going to do anything they want you, They're going to have you do whatever. If you ask them to, can you go over here? And yes, okay, Phil. And it's kind of crazy, the stuff I make them do. But, they do it for me. So in the end result, they see the end result and it looks great.
One funny story from the last wedding that I photographed. I ended up with photographs of this one lady who insisted on being in a lot of the photographs that I was taking at the reception where they were all dancing and stuff like that. She made a real sort of parade of herself for the camera. And when I presented the photographs to the bride and groom, they said, you know what, that album looks like it's going to be fantastic. But would you please take out the photographs of this woman because we don't know who she is. She was a gate crasher and she just literally crashed this wedding and was trying to get into it. She was like photobombing all the photos.
That's funny. Yeah, that happened to me a couple times. I did a group shot with her friends from college, and she's like, I have no idea who this person is. And he crashed the wedding there was another wedding downstairs or something, and he came up, and it was kind of funny. I feel like the easiest part is the shooting the job to me. Prepping it and shooting it is the easiest part. It's now the aftermath. You have to do the workflow. So what we do now, from all the years I've been doing this, what works best for me is that I will design the album within 3 to 4 weeks. They will get a design of their book, and they have 2 weeks to make any changes. If they do not make any changes, I will process the book as is, and it's in the contract. What's one of the hardest part as a photographer is that the client, after the wedding's over, the hype is over, they're not excited anymore. You give them the pictures, and they come back to you a year later or longer than that, and they ask you for the album and design the book and all. So it's important that you turn the job around quickly because you want the experience not just to be on the day of, but the experience of that afterwards. So the experience throughout the whole, from the time they met you and from the time they picked up the album, was great. So by designing the book, and like I said, as a photographer, we are shooting the book. We know why I shot that photo that way and why I cropped it that way, or why I compositioned that photograph like that, is because I'm designing the book as I shoot it. Okay, so when I get back, the only thing I got to do is, edit my photos, pick up my favorite ones, design the book. And what I do now is I post the images up on a website, and they also get a CD, a low-res CD of the images, and they can view the images, and they can tell me which ones they want or dislike, or remove that person because she was a crasher or whoever it was, and we can design the book to their liking. But it must be done within 2 weeks, any changes. If not, then we will process the book as is and hand the book over to them. Because today, people just want it done for them. They don't have time. They get to come back from the wedding, they see the photos, and they pass them around, and it's a nightmare afterwards. I can tell you how many photographers has that become a nightmare, and they don't do their album, and they get caught up in life, and they have a kid, and then they move, and they do something else, and they got the hardware floor put in, or people are just caught up in life, and they don't have the time or patience to pick out 1,000 photos and look at them and pick out their favorites. They don't. As photographers, it's our job to process that book and to hand it to them within a reasonable time. That's even faster in a month, I hope. But I'm basically flipping these albums around very quickly now. Before, it was, I would give them I'm telling you the truth. What happened last time, I would give them the numbers, and and I said, pick out your favorites, and I'll design the book. And they come back to me a year or so later, and I'm doing the last one, and I'm too busy. It's a nightmare, and the experience is not good. I'm doing this from years. It works out really well. The experience is well. They love it. They get the album in a very good, timely manner. Another thing I'm doing is 3 to 4 days from the event, I will send them an app, about 40 images of my favorites, and it's a PK photo app. They get down their phone, it holds them over until they see the album.
Kind of keeps the enthusiasm
right
on the boil, as it were. When you're shooting, when you're doing the actual wedding itself, you mentioned that you are photographing with the final book design in mind. Now, does that help to prevent you from overshooting?
Yes, it does. I know I got it. If I see, sometimes you can get away with the dancing shots. We're shooting the dancing shots. But if I know I got it, and if I see something unique, I don't know, they're picking the bride up or the groom, or they're doing something unique, of course I'm going to get that. They just jump up and down. It's the same shot I did last time. But if it's something different, I'll make them do something different. If something's going on, I might change lenses into a fisheye lens and kind of get something funky and get in their face a little bit with it. Trying not to get the same shot I just got an hour ago from another song they did. Yes, it does prevent you from overshooting, because you're thinking a little bit, and how am I going to start this album out? If you can really think about how to design your albums, and I'm sure as photographers, we all know how we like our albums now. What's going to be on page 1, 2, and 3, and when you go down to the line. Like now, a helpful hint, the parents. When I do the cake cutting, I bring the parents up. And when I bring the parents up, I say, look, just get together over here, hang off to my right and my left, determine what size, wherever the situation is. And I will put them on the other side, opposite of where they're cutting. And basically, that's my opposite page. So here they are cutting, and I turn to them, and they're watching, they're laughing, and there's my, so that's a perfect example. And again, I'm bringing the parents involved. They're principal actors, right? Mm-hmm. It's another photo I'm selling in the album. So a reaction page. So get the parents involved. If you have to, I go up to the two moms and say, look, when we cut the cake, and you bring your husbands up, we're going to cut the cake. I want you guys next to me. And I just say, just hang over here. Or they stand next to the left of me, or now I get them cutting the cake, and I just turn over, and there's my reaction page, and I'm getting that shot. So I'm setting it up, and again, I'm designing my book as I shoot it.
The whole sort of issue of overshooting, or going to a wedding and treating the camera like it's some kind of a high-powered machine gun. I would imagine that after a very hard Saturday photographing a wedding and you come home tired, maybe you put the photos on the computer, and then you go to bed, you get it the next day, and you look at it and you're faced with 4,000 images that you've got to sift through. It's really daunting, and I learned very quickly that was not how I wanted to spend my day.
Nigel, when there was film, I shot the same way. People thought I was nuts. I was proofless. I used to just shoot the film, and there was a machine. I used to scan them onto a disc, and that's how I did it. It was kind of crazy, but it was a low-res scan, and I would just pick the best images and put them on this. Back in the time, it was a videotape, but very unique. So when I shoot, it was kind of funny when I bought my first digital camera, was back in '04. It's crazy how I still shoot the same way, like, because I used to come back with 100 rolls of film. People thought I was nuts, but I wasn't paying for all that proofing. I was proofless, and they would still book me. I would talk to them, and they said, "Why you want the proofs? You gonna have a shoebox of pictures, or do you want the album?" So it's all about the album in the end. You're gonna take the proofs and put them in a drawer, and maybe save 20% of them, if that. There was clients that paid for the proofs, and don't get me wrong, they paid for them, but I try to explain to them it was all about the shot in between. I might shoot 4 or 5 images, but it's always that one shot in between. I'm waiting for it to unfold. If mom and dad see dad's dancing with bride, and okay, I got the shot, I got another one, all right, that's good enough, and walk away, right? But it's the one that he laughs and he puts his head, that's the shot. So I'm always concentrating watching the subject. So I don't want to just get that one and just 2 shots and it's good enough and walk away. If something unfolds, I want to be on it and I want to get the shot. So that's the way I shot back then. And it's the same way today, because people feel, oh, photography, it's free, you're shooting anyway, you might as well just, it's the same deal. So that's the way I shot. It was crazy because when the film came out of the camera, I used to keep a Sharpie with me. I used to look at my watch, and I used to put a time on raw film when it came out of my camera. And then I would put it in order and tell the lab to process it in this order. And it would come back in a big roll, like a big canister, and be rolled up. And I would just take it and unroll it and put it through the scanner. And it was crazy. It was nuts. People thought it was nuts, but that's the way we did it back then.
Well, obviously it worked for you, so it can't be all that bad. So how do your clients find you?
Number one is probably my brides. My brides are my best clients, my best fan base. Friends are getting married, and sisters getting married, or cousins, somebody. And then I would say the vendors, the relationships with the vendors, the caterer, or, the hotel, or the dressmaker, or by having relationships with these people. And even the band, sometimes, oh, there's a great band. They booked the band, and then you need a photographer. I have a great guy I know. Because, maybe I was at the wedding, I shot the band, I send him some photos, and he posts them up on his website. And now he's going to remember me. So it's basically, having relationships with people and helping people out, and thanking them for referring you. It's a privilege doing this because they could have gotten anybody, and they picked me. And it's kind of cool when it comes down to it, and they grab me to do it. It's kind of neat. It's an honor being there. It really is.
Earlier on, we mentioned a little bit about the experience that people have from working with you. Mm-hmm. How big a part does this overall experience really play in your business and for your clients?
It's huge. If they have a great experience, they're going to refer you. They're always going to think about you when it comes to photography. So the experience really, from the time they walk into your office and meet you for the first time until they pick up the album, or I even have people that after they get married, they have a baby. I photograph their baby and become the family photographer for them. So it's the experience is huge. If they have a great experience, they're going to keep coming back to you. It's really important.
It's a common thread, as I said earlier on, amongst a lot of the photographers that I talk to on this podcast, is the importance of the experience that they give to their clients, and they're very conscious and deliberate about it. But, for new photographers who are trying to get into the business and that kind of thing, what would you say are the top mistakes that they make?
It's important that if you're starting out, hit it off with them. If they like you, they're gonna love you. You don't have to be the best photographer. You don't have to say, I won this award, won that award. I don't say it's not about awards and being a great photographer. Of course, oh yeah, but I'm Phil. Oh yeah, by the way, did I tell you I have a camera with me? I'm here to take some photos. That's what you want to try to say. Is you don't want to talk about yourself and talk about how great you are and you've done this and done that, and then it's an honor for you to have me. No, you got to reverse the role, and it's all about you being a privilege, being a part of their day, and being a part of this event. That's, I think, is the biggest. I feel. I don't know what other people feel. I think that's the biggest part. I see a lot of photographers out there. It's all about them. And once you start showing that it's about them and their experience and their take, and talk to them and chat with them. And it doesn't have to be about photography, about their day or where they're going on their honeymoon. Oh, yeah, I've been there before. And you talk about some restaurant you've been to or wherever. And it goes a long way.
What about pricing? Because, again, this is another area where so many photographers that are new to the business particularly, and even a lot of the people that have been in it for a long time, I think, struggle with trying to find the right prices to charge. A lot of the folks I talk to, for example, I'll ask them, what are you charging for weddings? Well, right now it's X dollars or X $1,000. Well, what do you mean right now? Well, I keep changing it because I can't really seem to find that right sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
They put their prices up and then they get scared because they don't think people are going to pay them. So they bring them back down and they attract tire kickers. So they put them back up and it's like a vicious cycle. Do you have any advice to help them figure out how to get out of that trap?
You got to figure out where you want to be in a sense of, how many events do you need to do a year at that number? So if there's if you have to do 100 events that year at that number to survive or to make a living with your family or, pay your bills and have some money in the bank, you have to figure out a business plan. You got to know what number and your expenses was costing you, and you got to know when it's not worth it anymore. By doing a business plan, a lot of photographers don't do a business plan. They don't know what their expenses are. They don't know. Figure out what your expenses are. Once you figure that out, then you can start figuring out how many events you have to do a year. And let's say for example, okay, I hit my 100, I'm good. Okay, at that number, wherever that number is, it could be $100, wherever. I'm just saying, wherever that number is. Okay, your next wedding that comes in, you know what? I'm going to raise it $500. I raise it, another $500. I'm now charging $600 for that wedding. If you want me, it's an extra, $5, and they book you, right? Okay, well, I'm making an extra buck over here, so I do 101 this year, and leave at that number, and then if it gets, and that's basically how I started raising my prices. Once I hit my number, I raised it $500, and then I kept it there for all next year. And then once I booked my 50 I needed, and then I raised it again. And then at a certain point, I leveled out. But that's how if you want to start raising your prices, get to a point where, we all have to make a living, get to that number. And once you get to that number, raise that number and leave it there for next year and see what happens. And you will book your next 100 at that number of 1,500.
That's great advice, actually. It's very easy to see how that works. Last question. If you could jump in a time machine and travel back to when you started out and you could talk to young Phil, what would you have to say to him?
The only thing I would have done differently is probably change the name of the company. I want to call it Phil Kramer Photographers. I would have changed the company and called it XYZ, wherever it was. And I would have stepped back a little bit, be the creator, be the producer. Right now in my life, I feel that I should have worked backwards a little bit and didn't think of that when I was, when you start shooting away and you start doing these jobs, it's everything's great. But I feel that there's always somebody younger coming above you, and they want the experience, or they want the experienced guy, but then they get the younger guy, or I don't look my age, but it's kind of funny. But when I walk in, they go, oh my God, I was expecting like an old guy walking in. But it's, I've been doing this for a long time, but the couples today are 25, 30 years old. That's the market there. And they're college educated. That's the market I'm hitting. So it's, I relate to them, but like I said, it's, I rather would have stepped back, set up a company where I would have stepped back and I would have trained photographers and they would have shot the jobs for me. I would just be the creator and the owner of the company.
Right.
So that's the only thing I would have done differently, I think. And still not too late, should I say. I am working on something, and hopefully it will take off.
Well, no regrets, right? That's a good thing.
No regrets. It's still a great ride, and but when you're knocking out 40 to 50 events a year, it gets a little old sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard work.
It's hard work. You have help and all, but still, it's it comes to a point where you're like, I must have shot over 2,500 weddings in my lifetime, so it's a lot. So it's a lot of events, and you've seen everything. I've seen everything.
I'm sure that you will be going for a long time yet. And Phil, this has been great. Thank you so much for spending time with us here today. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and it's been really insightful to learn about your wedding photography side of your business and everything. And I really appreciate you being generous with your knowledge and time, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully I helped any way I can, and so hopefully somebody will pick something up I just said. So I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.